As evening approached, the rain fell heavier than it had during the day. It drummed dully on the old paper umbrella, a sound that brought a sense of calm. Songyu walked slowly, lost in thought. The trick on Matty Mountain was truly ingenious. Even with his level of Taoist cultivation, he had only seen the small path and the pavilion, but hadn't noticed the mysterious principles within. He felt that whoever had arranged it must have considerable expertise. Of course, it was not necessarily so. Every kind of magic in the world each has their own mysterious principle, much like the countless fields of knowledge and professions. Who can master them all? Especially in this age of inaccessible information, once one's knowledge and experience reach a certain level, further progress truly requires seeing with one's own eyes, spending time, and using one's heart to comprehend. Even immortals of 1,000 years wouldn't claim to fully understand all the world's arcane arts. Moreover, Songyu had only been here for a little over 20 years. There were many methods in the world that he didn't know, nor were they recorded in Hidden Dragon Temple. Having profound cultivation skills doesn't mean being able to understand the principles behind all things. Cultivation is cultivation, knowledge is knowledge, experience is experience, and level of attainment is level of attainment. Even an old immortal could be confused by a small trick they've never encountered before. This is logically consistent and also profoundly mysterious. However, Songyu thought of one person, the Swallow Immortal of Anking. A few days ago, he had discussed the Swallow Immortal with King Xianxia. He had asked King Xianxia about it. This Swallow Immortal was said to have resided in Anking for an unknown number of years. King Xianxia had only met him once, but his master's master had drank several cups of tea with him. He had also chatted about the Swallow Immortal Pavilion outside the city. In fact, there was also a Swallow Immortal Temple outside the city. The Swallow Immortal was said to have been already in Anking before the establishment of Zhaojiao Temple. At that time, he already had considerable cultivation skills. Even if he hadn't lived 1,000 years, he must have lived at least 800. But everything has its end. Nowadays, the growth of his cultivation no longer matched his declining health. Facing the limit of his lifespan, the old Swallow Immortal had no choice but to extend his life by turning to the divine Tao and seeking incense and offerings. Although becoming a god didn't guarantee immortality, as long as there were incense and offerings, he could extend his life for another day. Decades ago, Shuzhou experienced a severe drought and not a single grain was reaped. The Swallow Immortal performed magic to protect the livelihoods of the people in Anking. Although it wasn't totally good weather for crops, it was better than the surrounding counties. When the grain ran out later, he transformed into countless swallows, transporting grain in their beaks from official storehouses elsewhere, saving many lives. The people of Anking, grateful for his deeds, built a temple and a statue for him. This was the Swallow Immortal Temple outside the city, which now served as common lodgings for jianghu people. The temple had a lot of incense, offerings, and donations, but the Swallow Immortal appeared in a dream, instructing the temple's administrator to buy less incense and lamp oil. He was told to use the money instead to repair roads for the people, as well as build pavilions to provide shelter for passersby. He could be said to be really working hard to gather incense offerings. Unfortunately, the Swallow Immortal, in taking grain from the official storehouses at that time, might not have necessarily offended the court, but it was certainly not something the court approved of. Such cases could never be officially sanctioned. As a result, he was never conferred the title of god by the court. Being an anomaly, after all, he likely wasn't accepted by the heavenly palace either. One governed the earthly world, and the second governed ghosts and gods. The two combined with the result that the Swallow Immortal's fame remained confined to Anking. Even in nearby Lingbo, there wasn't a single temple dedicated to him. If it weren't for his 1,000 years of cultivation and the hearts of the people of Anking, he would likely have been labeled as a nefarious deity long ago. 1,000-year-old great demon, Songyu couldn't help but sigh. How many 1,000-year-old demons were there in this world? Don't underestimate the significance of 1,000 years. The world's rumors, there were often mentions of ancient 1,000-year-old demons, but aside from a few plants and animals that naturally live long enough to occasionally become demons, most are exaggerations and unfounded rumors. Just as the gods and immortals in the world were all said to have lived for eons, actually most have only been worshipped for a few centuries. Note that if you go back 1,000 or 2,000 years from the Great Yan dynasty, there was already no recorded history. Many of the gods worshipped by people back then have vanished into history. The gods people revered at the moment, disregarding their divine power and abilities, were mostly younger than the Swallow Immortal. Songyu felt extreme pressure when he thought of this person. It wasn't about cultivation or magic skills. Firstly, 1,000 years of age doesn't equate to 1,000 years of cultivation or attainments. Secondly, cultivation and attainments don't always translate into combat ability. In fact, most gods in the heavenly palace were civil officials. It was the sheer weight of 1,000 years in itself. Humanity has come this far through mutual support, with an instinct to respect the elderly and care for the young. Even a virtuous emperor on an outing, when meeting an 80-year-old man, would respectfully call him elder. The 1,000-year-old ancient cypress trees planted along Jianghu Road were instinctively respected for their longevity by many people, and the authorities had even enacted laws to protect them. How much more respect would be given to an elder who had witnessed 1,000 years of history and hardships? This pressure was essentially a kind of respect, and this swallow immortal terrace was likely connected with him. But with such a figure in Anking, why hadn't the water demon in Lingbo been dealt with long ago? While pondering this, he suddenly heard a voice yell behind him, "Hey, Taoist priest." It was a rough female voice. Song Yu and the cat immediately stopped and turned to look at the same time. Through the misty rain came a figure. She was clad in hemp clothing with her hair loose and holding a long saber. Her face was no longer covered up, revealing a somewhat round, goose egg-shaped face with eyes in which the black and white were distinct. "Greetings, Heroine Wu." "What a coincidence." "Quite. You're here. I thought you hadn't come. I looked for you for a long time but didn't find you." "We stood far away." "My eyesight is good." "We were quite far." "How was it? Did you enjoy it?" "It was eye-opening." "Hee," the woman grinned, walking alongside them. "If I had known you were watching, I would have gone up to let you witness my skills." "I saw many of your fellow disciples. They're all top martial artists, so I can imagine your prowess." "They're not quite as good as me." "Impressive." Song Yu complimented, then paused and asked, "This bluestone terrace is well made, with even a yin-yang symbol in the middle. It must have taken a lot of effort and money. However, why is it called Swallow Immortal Terrace?" "Heth, I just asked my master today." "I'd like to hear the details." "It wasn't built by humans." "Then by..." "They say that in the past when Jianghu people first chose this place as the location for their gathering, it was just a flat piece of land when they came for the gathering. By the second gathering, someone claiming to be a descendant of the Swallow Immortal came. He said the Swallow Immortal was moved by the heroic spirit of that group of Jianghu seniors and wished to build a platform here for them to use for future exchanges and duels. He only wished that they would remember the Swallow Immortal's gift and offer 2 sticks of incense when they came and went." As the woman spoke, she glanced back at the platform at the foot of the mountain by the river. The Jianghu seniors heard this and agreed, only half believing such a good offer. Thereupon, the place would change night by night, changing by a layer each time. After 49 days, the Swallow Immortal Terrace was completed. "Miraculous." "I thought so too." She suddenly frowned. "Hey, why do you Taoist priests have a thing for numbers like 49 and 81? Why do things always take that long?" "Most of us do as we please, not sticking to such numbers. Things take as long as they take, and numbers are just numbers. But when people pass on rumors, they find these numbers pleasant and mysterious. Perhaps some Taoists themselves wanted to use these numbers to tell people, or maybe they were following the habits of predecessors, or for some other reason so." Song Yu smiled. "Oh," the woman nodded repeatedly as she drew out the syllable. Rain from the sky did not stop, and her hair was already wet, sticking to her face. Her clothes were also soaked through, and clung to her body, yet she seemed completely unaware, simply strolling forward. She neither disliked being rained on nor had any issue with Song Yu holding an umbrella. Only when the rain bothered her in some way would she either shake her head, wipe her face, or purse her mouth to blow a puff of air, resolving the inconvenience and moving on. Seeing this, Song Yu couldn't help but ask, "Want an umbrella?" She waved her hand, smiling. "Jianghu people are their own sky. Why use an umbrella?" Her carefree grace in that instant made Song Yu look at her several times, even slowing his steps. \\\\\. Back at the ancient temple with green tiles, rain fell on the bamboo grove. Song Yu returned the umbrella to the young boy respectfully. "Thank you for the umbrella." "No need to thank me." The boy folded the umbrella, speaking very maturely despite his youth. "Master has grown old and prefers staying in the temple, brewing and drinking tea. We never go out on rainy days, so the umbrella was stored unused for a long time, almost rotting away. It's better that you use it. It even saved me the trouble of taking it out to sprinkle water on it." Such words were really comforting. Song Yu couldn't help but smile. "It must be fate that I used it." "Indeed." The boy also smiled, a stark contrast to the cold demeanor he showed to Jianghu people a few days ago. Just as the boy was putting away the umbrella, he suddenly remembered. Senior Taoist brother, are you not going out tomorrow? I will be going out. Won't you need the umbrella? I guess that it won't rain tomorrow. That would be best. Tomorrow I can go up the mountain to look for mushrooms. It's already the 2nd month, not sure if they've sprouted. The young boy didn't doubt him either and only put the umbrella away, heading back into the house. Senior Taoist brother, come quickly to eat dinner. After dinner, Songyu returned to his room. He lit the oil lamp and spread out some hemp paper. Songyu had originally intended to ask Lady Calico to help grind the ink. However, seeing her alone on the bed, deeply engrossed in some imaginary battle with the air, and having so much fun with so little effort, he could not bear to disturb her. Instead, he took the inkstone outside to catch some rainwater under the eaves. He took the ink stick and patiently ground it himself. Dipping the brush in ink, he paused to gather his thoughts before writing. The ink he used was also congealed fragrance ink. Though it was the finest quality ink, as expensive as gold, he didn't intend to keep it as a collector's item. He continued to use it daily, or rather, he considered he was collecting it in another place. Suddenly, the cat jumped onto the table. Taoist priest, what are you writing? Noting down some things. What things? Beginning of the 2nd month in the 2nd year of Ming, arrived in Anqing County, Long Commandery, Suzhou. Coincidentally encountered a grand jianghu event, the Great Liuzheng Gathering. What's this? Something I'm writing. Why write it? So I know I have walked through this world. The Calico cat moved closer to the paper for a look. Though she obviously couldn't read, she still wanted to look. Not only did she look, but she even used her paw to nudge Songyu's hand to stop him from blocking her view. It was really hard to write this way. But what else could he do? \\\\. After finally finishing, he went to blow out the lamp and discovered that the oil in the oil lamp was nearly gone. He hadn't planned on using so much. Though oil lamps were expensive, if used for such purposes, it was worth it. Lady Calico. What is it? Time to sleep. We need to get up early tomorrow. What for? We're going to Maddie Mountain. To watch those people fight again. To meet the swallow immortal of Anqing. Is it a swallow? The Calico cat immediately got close to his face, so close that her nose and mouth almost touched his face. 1,000-year-old great demon. 1,000 years. Yes. Silence. The Calico cat gradually calmed down. Chapter 57, The Swallow Youth. Early next morning, the weather was cloudy. The martial arts competitions of the Great Liuzheng Gathering would last for 3 days, and today many jianghu people were heading to the Swallow Immortal Terrace again. Songyu saw the pavilion again, and he saw the small winding path leading to it. However, today there was no hazy mist, and everything appeared very clear. He had no worries, and continued to walk up. It didn't take long before he arrived at the pavilion. He sat cross-legged again, quietly observing the scenery. Anqing's mountains and rivers were beautiful in both clear and rainy weather, each having its own charm. Not long after, a swallow flew in from somewhere in the sky, still flying randomly, up and down, left and right, but never leaving the sky above Swallow Immortal Terrace. This reminded Songyu of summer evenings when swallows would always be flying and frolicking in the sky agilely like this, giving people a sense of freedom and carefree existence. Songyu stood up and brushed off the dust. He cupped his hands and bowed to the sky, saying, You have lingered here for a long time, why not come down for a chat? The swallow continued to fly randomly in the sky. Some of the jianghu people below were also amazed. It was indeed too early in the season for this. However, everyone knew this place was called Swallow Immortal Terrace, and had heard the rumors about Swallow Immortal Terrace and the Swallow Immortal, so when they looked up, they felt some respect besides surprise. But as they watched, the swallow disappeared. In the pavilion halfway up the mountain, there was now a youth. This youth looked around 14 or 16 years old, slender, with red lips and white teeth. He was extremely beautiful, and at first glance, it was hard to tell if he was male or female. The youth's beauty was difficult to describe in words. In this era, there were many descriptions of peerless beauties and jade-like gentlemen in books, but in fact, for various reasons, truly good-looking people were rare in reality. And due to the limitations of makeup techniques, a person's beauty was truly natural if they looked good, which was rare. The appearance of this youth before him was unmatched in any era, whether past or present. Because he was not an ordinary person, naturally, no matter how beautiful an ordinary person was, they could not compare to him. It would not be surprising if he were a demon. If a demon took human form and intended to pursue beauty, most of them would look like this. But this youth seemed extremely shy or extremely afraid of people, or perhaps extremely afraid of Songyu. He stood at the edge of the pavilion, his eyes evasive, not daring to look at him. He greeted him with raised hands. I am Yan, and greetings to you, mister. I am Songyu, greetings. After returning the greeting, Songyu asked, am I occupying your place? No. You seem very uneasy. Are you perhaps afraid of me? No, that's just my nature. I see. Seeing his unease, Songyu nodded and did not dwell on the issue, as it would only make him more uneasy. I wonder what is your relation to the swallow immortal in the rumors? He is my ancestor. The youth stood very far away, truly like a frightened bird. His voice was similar to that of a human boy going through puberty. After answering, he took a deep breath and, summoning his courage, asked, May I ask, mister, are you the one who eliminated the water demon in Lingbo County? How did you know? I came specifically to find you, mister. My ancestor heard that the water demon in Lingbo County was eliminated by a passing master, and it was said that this master was leading a horse and had a calico cat with him. The youth glanced at the calico cat beside Songyu. Though he was now much larger than the cat, he was still inexplicably timid. After eliminating the demon, the master headed towards Anking County. My ancestors speculated that you would come to Anking, so I was sent to look for you in the city. However, after searching these few days, I couldn't find a Taoist priest who led a horse and had a cat with him. It wasn't until you inadvertently came to the pavilion on this mountain yesterday that I came over for a look and found you. This pavilion. It was originally built by my ancestor when the great Liujiang gathering first started for watching the event. As my ancestor's body grew progressively weaker later, people seldom came here. The youth said, there are some mysterious principles here, and without profound cultivation skills, one cannot see this path or this pavilion. I see. Songyu then looked at the youth and asked curiously, but since you discovered me yesterday and were here, why didn't you come to me then? The youth blushed deeply. I was scared. Scared of what? Songyu laughed. I don't eat people. It's not because of you, the youth hurriedly explained, as if fearing he might misunderstand. It's just my nature. I've been timid since I was young, useless, and afraid to speak to people. Although my ancestor had given the order, He trailed off without finishing. Songyu originally intended to laugh again, to show his amiable gentleness, and ease the youth's tension before responding. However, seeing his flustered and timid expression with extreme shame amid his fear as well as his trembling body, Songyu could not help but put away his smile and earnestly said, I cannot agree with your words. Even if you don't like interacting with people, it's just your unique personality and preferences. Simply because of this, how can you say you are useless? The youth couldn't help but sneak a glance at him, only to see the earnestness amid this Taoist priest's gentleness. Don't you find me strange, mister? Not at all. People in this world are diverse, each with their own personality and life. I believe demons are also the same. Songyu said, you must never belittle yourself. The little demon was stunned for a moment. Actually, it wasn't completely self-belittling. His ancestor had always said so since he was young. Being afraid to speak and interact with people was just being timid and useless. Everyone thought so. But this Taoist priest's view was actually a strange one, something he had never heard before. You? My apologies. No matter. After Songyu finished speaking, he looked at him. Unexpectedly, the youth stood there very awkwardly, his eyes darting around, not knowing where to place his hands, even feeling uncomfortable about where he was standing. The pavilion fell silent for a few moments. After waiting for a while, Songyu finally said helplessly, You were specially sent by the swallow immortal to find me. Don't you have something to say to me? Oh. The youth finally seemed to remember and hurriedly bowed to Songyu. My ancestor would like to invite you to our home for a chat. When would that be? Now, the youth sneaked a glance at Songyu. Is that possible? I would also like to witness the swallow immortal's glory earlier. Songyu showed a regretful expression, pointing ahead. Unfortunately, the great Liujiang gathering is happening right now. Then, how about tomorrow? No disrespect to the swallow immortal, but as you know, tomorrow will be the most exciting day of the great Liujiang gathering. Songyu apologized. I happen to have made arrangements with an acquaintance to watch the heroes' competitions together tomorrow. No problem. What about tonight? That's possible. Good. Then, it's settled. I will come to find you before dusk. I will wait for you here. Then, by the way, what is it, mister? I have something to ask you. The boy saw the Taoist priest smiling and then looking up at the sky behind him, his eyes seemingly shining. Is the scenery in the sky better than on the ground? This. The youth was stunned for a moment. I don't know. Then never mind. No problem. Songyu's expression remained gentle. I was just asking casually. Then, take care. With a puff of gray smoke, a black and white figure shot into the sky, as if it was afraid of being late. It quickly flew far away and disappeared into the clouds. Songyu shook his head, not surprised. Even among humans, there are so many strange and diverse individuals. There were so many kinds of demons, it was normal they should have all kinds of personalities. He then sat down again to watch the great Liuzheng gathering. The weather was fine today, and the jianghu people who came for the gathering seemed to be in better spirits, competing more eagerly. However, while everyone gathered chaotically below at the Swallow Immortal Terrace, shouting continuously, only Songyu remained in the mountainside pavilion, watching the grand jianghu event for half a day, as well as appreciating the shifting clouds. \\\\. There was a saying, only places with roads are under the control of the imperial court. This statement was actually quite accurate. In this era, this was indeed the case. Great Yan spanned 18,000 li from east to west, and over 10,000 li from north to south. Despite its seemingly vast territory, actually only a very small portion was under the court's control. Once one left the cities, and the major as well as minor roads built by the authorities, the influence and control of the court declined sharply. The farther away, the lesser the control. Beyond Anqing County, there were still major and minor official roads. Beyond these official roads, many intersecting small paths led to various large and small villages, each with its own fields. But aside from these, Anqing also had 10,000 mountain peaks and forests. These were places difficult for people to reach. It was hard to imagine that there could be a large rustic courtyard house hidden in these mountains. Flap, 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 there was the sound of wings flapping. A swallow flew in and transformed into a black and white-clad youth who landed in the main hall. In front of him sat an old man in a chair. Ancestor. The youth hurriedly bowed, eyes fixed on his toes. Cough, cough, no need for formalities. Silence. Why did you return so late today? Today. Speak louder, raise your head. You are in front of a family member, cough. The old man coughed as he scolded. You haven't done anything shameful, so you should be open and upright. You're always like this, who will respect you outside. Silence. The youth didn't dare to speak. His ancestor was naturally correct. It was all teachings meant to guide him, and for his own good. He dared not refute. But inexplicably, he thought of that Taoist priest. At that moment, the old man's voice startled him again. After these few days, did you find that Taoist priest? The youth hurriedly replied, I found him. How was he? That Taoist priest. His cultivation skills are profound. He immediately saw the small path and pavilion that you concealed on Matty Mountain. The youth reported honestly. I have arranged with him to bring him here tonight. Did you ask if he is from Hidden Dragon Temple? I forgot. The youth's face turned pale immediately. What are you doing? The old man angrily struck the floor with his crutch, making a rattling sound. If you forgot, then you forgot. What's the big deal? What can I do to you? What are you afraid of? You're the only junior in the clan who has achieved transformation into human form. But with your timid demeanor, what can you accomplish? The youth did not dare to respond. Perhaps it wasn't fear, but shame. He felt useless for failing at even such a small task. Maybe it was also fear, but absolutely not fear of being scolded by his ancestor. Go now. The old man waved him off weakly. He just felt that the current younger generation was truly not as good as previous ones. The youth also turned and walked out with his head down. But after taking 2 steps, a thoughtful and hesitant look appeared on his face. After walking a few more steps, he finally turned back and said with a trembling voice, Ancestor, I'm thinking of fetching a swallow pill. As soon as he said this, he immediately added his reason. Because when I go again to invite the Taoist priest over tonight, it would not be appropriate to ask him to walk here. He secretly glanced at the ancestor, fearing rejection. And it wasn't just a simple fear of being refused. However, the old man merely waved his hand without even looking up. It's rare for you to have your own opinion for once. So, go. The old man was angered by his uselessness. This was followed by another bout of coughing. Silence. The youth quivered and hurriedly ran out. Chapter 58, A Wonderful Journey. At dusk on Matty Mountain, a swallow hovered above the clouds, circling repeatedly, rehearsing in his mind how to speak and act in the upcoming meeting to ensure no mistakes. Then he finally descended through the clouds and flew into the pavilion. The Jianghu people on Swallow Immortal Terrace below had mostly dispersed long ago, leaving only a few individuals either sparring, discussing matters, or strolling around chatting. Inside the pavilion, a young Taoist sat cross-legged on the floor with his eyes closed. Calico cat was on the left side of the pavilion, stretching lazily with her torso low and her rear raised. After stretching, she shook her head so vigorously that her facial features became a blur. A swallow landed on the far right of the pavilion and transformed into a youth. The young Taoist also opened his eyes. "Greetings," he said. "Sorry to keep you waiting, mister. The words he had rehearsed vanished inexplicably from his mind. The boy fell silent for a moment, then bowed and extended his hand, offering a small red pill on his palm. "Mister, please take this pill." Xianxia accepted it, took a brief look, and then said to the cat beside him, "Lady Calico, please stay here. I'll be away for a while. However, my body will remain here, so don't think I'm dead." The Calico cat turned her head to look at him. "What?" Xianxia shook his head and swallowed the pill. The world shook violently, and his soul left his body. The world was still the same world. The colors were still the same colors, but something was different, though it was hard to describe. The Calico cat looked back at the Xianxia sitting on the floor, then lifted her head to look at the standing Xianxia. Her eyes gradually widened, and her mouth was slightly opened in surprise, revealing two small, sharp canines. She seemed utterly astonished. "Taoist priest, you have turned into a ghost." "It's just astral travel." "What kind of travel is that?" "I'll explain when I return," Xianxia whispered. "Please look after my body for me, Lady Calico." "Oh." Xianxia then looked at the youth and nodded at him. "Please lead the way." "Okay." The youth suddenly transformed back into a swallow. Interestingly, Xianxia also transformed into a swallow together with him. As the eyes of swallows differed from those of humans, the way they perceived light and saw things was different. Thus, after transforming into a swallow, Xiangxia's greatest realization was that the entire world looked different through his eyes. The distances, heights, colors of everything in the world, and even the perception of motion and stillness were different. Seeing Lady Calico even made him feel somewhat frightened. Could only be described as wondrous. "Let's go." The youth who had transformed into a swallow flapped his wings and flew away. Naturally, Xianxia did not know how to fly as a swallow, but at that moment, he did not need to control himself. He totally flew like the swallow in front of him, automatically following the way he flew. His senses remained intact. He felt the evening wind and flew into the clouds and mist. Suddenly, he had a panoramic view of 10,000 mountain peaks and forests, interlinked rivers, and the setting sun sinking into the earth, painting the landscape blood-red. The swallows flew fast and urgently, often changing directions. Sometimes they would soar straight up, almost vertically, with not a trace of the earth visible in his entire field of vision, as if they were about to pierce through the blue dome of heaven. He would then crash into the depths of the clouds and mist, becoming completely drenched and chilled. Breaking through the cloud layer, they were above a sea of clouds. In the pure evening sky, the high-altitude sunset hadn't faded yet. The sea of clouds was dyed red, and a few stars began to twinkle overhead, gradually increasing in number. In that moment, Xianxia felt infinite freedom in his heart, as if he could go anywhere in the vast world. However, this feeling didn't last long. The swallows suddenly folded their wings again, diving straight down through the sea of clouds like an arrow that had lost its energy. When they emerged from the clouds again, the earth filled their view. From an observer's perspective, they were just two swallows flying in the sky, unremarkable. Yet experiencing it personally, the wind whistled fiercely as he battled against the vast sky, and it was enough to scare a normal person into screaming. As the ground grew larger before his eyes, individual plants on the ground became clearly distinguishable. Just when it seemed they would die crashing into the ground, the swallows finally spread their wings and abruptly changed direction, flying left. Moving left and right, suddenly up and down in this way, the thrill was like viewing the beauty of mountains and rivers from high above, challenging the limits of his senses and inner self. However, for swallows, this was merely normal. As night fell, the mountains became shadows, and the river merely a ribbon reflecting the twilight glow. The swallows flew far away from human habitation, just flying towards the dusk. Unfortunately, all journeys had an end. The swallows flew into a courtyard house, deep in the mountains. Boom! Both swallows transformed back into human form. Under the eaves of the courtyard house were all swallow nests. There were many swallows flying both inside and outside the house, chirping noisily. Colorful lanterns were hung high inside the courtyard house, yet few people were visible. "Mister," The youth stole a glance at Songyu and gestured for him to enter. Songyu followed him inside. They entered a large room, elegantly decorated, but with only one old man sitting at the seat of honor. The old man was tall and thin, with silver hair and a face full of wrinkles, seemingly frail enough to be toppled by the wind. Seeing the way he looked, Songyu understood why a water demon could still cause havoc with the swallow immortal here. Seeing him enter, the old man hurriedly stood up while leaning on his crutch and greeted him with cupped hands. "Honored guest, forgive me for not welcoming you from afar." Songyu didn't dare to slight him and hurriedly returned the greeting. "I am Songyu, a hermit from Linquin County, Yizhu. I have long heard of the swallow immortal's reputation. It is an honor to meet you." "I'm not worthy, it's just a title carelessly used by the people below the mountain," the old man said in a very aged voice. He quickly pointed to a chair beside him. "Please, take a seat." "Thank you," Songyu sat without hesitation. "According to the current customs of the people below the mountain, you may call me Mr. Swallow. I am unworthy of the title Swallow Immortal." "You are too polite. Young as you are, your cultivation skills are remarkable, and you have helped the people eliminate a menace in Lingbo County. You are a man of great righteousness. I should have invited you personally, but being old and too frail to walk, I had to send my worthless descendant to invite you on my behalf," the old man said, glancing at the respectful youth standing to the side and shaking his head inwardly. "This boy is timid and useless. I hope he did not offend you." "You are mistaken." Songyu glanced at the youth who hung his head. He had just asked him about the scenery in the sky that morning, and by evening, he had invited him to experience a wonderful flying journey. Songyu didn't think it was a coincidence, nor did he believe that the swallow immortal always invited guests in such a manner. The little demon was not versed in worldly matters. He was naive and sincere. He had responded to kindness with kindness. Songyu couldn't help but like him. Moreover, that night's flying experience was priceless, and he still remembered it fondly in his heart even then. Songyu couldn't help but feel grateful. So he smiled and said, "This young friend is pure and kind. Though our acquaintance was brief, we had 2 pleasant conversations. He is not as you described." "You do not know," the old swallow immortal chuckled and said. "This child has been timid since childhood, not daring to speak to others. He is afraid of people. If he met his own kind, elders, or even siblings, he is unable to speak. Then he must be very good at being alone." "Haha, let's not talk about this." The old swallow immortal waved his hand. "I have not yet offered you tea, which is really impolite." As soon as he finished speaking, 2 lidded teacups of tea appeared on the table. The old swallow immortal picked up one of the cups first. Songyu then picked up the other. Strangely, though he was astral traveling, he could still pick up the cup as usual, lift the lid, and sniff the tea fragrance as usual. He could skim the tea froth and took a sip, tasting it vividly. "Excellent tea," Songyu complimented with a smile. It was indeed intriguing. "I am glad you like it," the old swallow immortal paused. "I heard you say just now that you are from Linquin County in Yizhu. May I ask if you are from Hidden Dragon Temple?" "Yes, I am." Songyu actually wasn't surprised. Each generation of disciples from Hidden Dragon Temple would descend the mountain to travel at intervals of at least 30 to 40 years. In an era when the average lifespan was just over 30 years, it might not be entirely accurate to say it spanned many lifetimes, but it certainly was a long time. Moreover, since many temple owners did not casually reveal their origins during their travels, it was normal for ordinary people to be unaware of them. However, given the age of this swallow immortal, it was almost impossible that he wouldn't know about Hidden Dragon Temple. The old swallow immortal sighed again. "Another generation already." "Indeed. Is Taoist Duoxing your master?" "Yes. I've met her before." The old swallow immortal's eyes revealed nostalgia. She was truly a beautiful woman, yet also quite reckless. She only cultivated the 5 elements method and only studied 5 element spells. When he met her, she was probably not even 30 years old. At that age, purely in terms of magic battles, it was likely that even the chief officer of the Thunder Division in the Heavenly Palace and the renowned Gold Spirit official might not surpass her. She was truly a prodigy. However, such a prodigy was too easygoing while traveling the world, sometimes more than she ought to be. Back then, he also had a promising descendant who immediately took a liking to Taoist Duoxing, admiring her greatly. However, the formation of this predestined relationship also hindered his cultivation greatly. This time, he had learned a lesson. Counting the years, he deduced that the one who eliminated the water demon in Lingbo County might be a disciple of Hidden Dragon Temple. Hence, he chose the descendant who was the most reticent to invite him, avoiding any further cultivation disruption. The old swallow immortal glanced at the youth, who had lowered his head, lost in thought. Ignoring him, he continued. Was Taoist Tianxuan your master's master? Indeed. Speaking of it, I even owe him a great debt. I'd like to hear the details. It was nearly a century ago. I was already in my twilight years, seeking hard for the divine Tao in vain. The old swallow immortal shook his head and sighed. I met Taoist Tianxuan from Hidden Dragon Temple by chance when he passed through this place during his travels. He predicted that a severe drought would strike Suzhou in the future and advised me to prepare in advance. Later, Suzhou indeed suffered a great drought. I was able to protect the local people here and establish myself in the divine Tao through the incense and offerings. I see, Songyu nodded thoughtfully. That explained it. Controlling the weather was now a divine Tao skill. To rely solely on cultivation skills and magic to bring rain to an area during a severe drought was extremely difficult. When he first heard about it, he was surprised, thinking that this swallow immortal had extraordinary abilities. However, if a lot of preparation had been done over many years, it made more sense. As for the divine Tao, embarking on the divine Tao was not difficult in itself. All one needed were some followers. However, the old swallow immortal, having lived for a millennium, naturally pursued different things from those rural illegitimate gods. Firstly, the source of incense and offerings must be legitimate. Secondly, he must avoid provoking eradication by the heavenly palace and the imperial court. As for his master's master, though Songyu had never met him, he did know about him. Each generation of Hidden Dragon Temple owners was extraordinary, though their skills varied. For example, his master excelled in magic battles, while his master's master was an expert in astrological calculations. He had chosen their own Taoist names. His master had traveled thousands of miles and thus named herself Taoist Duoxing. His master's master took the name Tianxuan because of the idiom saying that human calculation could not surpass heavenly calculation. It was arrogant, but he wanted to refer to himself as heavenly calculation. However, Songyu had heard that his later years were unfortunate and that he did not die peacefully. In short, I owe Hidden Dragon Temple a great favor. I have not repaid Taoist Tianxuan. I should repay it to the successor of Hidden Dragon Temple. You're joking, Songyu respectfully said. Heaven has the virtue of cherishing life, and saving the common people from calamity was a virtuous act. You may feel that you have embarked upon the divine Tao through my master's master skill. However, from my master's master's perspective, wasn't it also his borrowing your skills to benefit the people, thereby accruing some merit and good fortune for himself? No matter what, such a deed that benefits all living beings should not be discussed in terms of favors and gratitude. As he spoke, he glanced at the old swallow immortal. This old swallow immortal was nearing the end of his life. If he died like this, even if he could still become a deity by relying on the religious faith of Anqing County commoners, how much divine power can faith from just one place bestow? When his physical body was gone, without his cultivation skills, and also without the imperial courts conferring a title or the heavenly palace's acknowledgement, he would become an illegitimate deity in the mountains. Could he still be so carefree? Even if the heavenly palace and the imperial court ignored him, how much longer could he live? The great Emperor Qijin did not yet exist 200 years ago. 200 years later, would the people here still remember a swallow immortal? Songyu suspected he had more to ask for. Chapter 59, Just a Night Stroll. Sigh, the old swallow immortal let out a long sigh, raised his cup to drink, but then put it down and said to him, Pity me, though I borrowed some astrological insight from Taoist friend Tianxuan to benefit this region. In the end, I am still an anomaly, feared by the heavenly palace. Distributing grain from the official storehouses had also displeased the court of this world. The hint of sorrow in his voice was inevitable. Pity my kind who are barn swallows to begin with. We have always coexisted closely with humans since ancient times. How could we, unlike other transformed demons, commit acts harmful to humanity? Songyu thought to himself, as expected. However, he didn't show it and remained respectful, merely asking, Swallow immortal, you had ensured the weather for the area back then, already benefiting countless lives. Why did you also take the risk of taking grain from official storehouses elsewhere? You must know that if the emperor at the time had the same temperament as the current emperor, he would have never let you off easily. How could I not know? Swallow immortal sighed again, but I had an agreement with Taoist friend Tianxuan to do my utmost not to let anyone in this area starve to death. I am not human and already feared by them. If I were also untrustworthy and unrighteous, how could I have established a place in this world for 900 years? Swallow immortal, you are righteous, Songyu said sincerely. Such moral conduct, whether in humans, demons, or ghosts, was worthy of human respect. Now my lifespan is nearing its end. When this cultivated body withers away, I will rely on incense and offerings to become a local netherworld deity. It's just that I originally wished to benefit the people, but the heavenly palace and the court wouldn't allow it. I'm afraid I won't last long after death. Swallow Immortal looked at Song Yu and no longer concealed anything. Taoist friend Tianxuan told me back then that his disciple wouldn't be able to help me, but decades later, when his grand disciple came again, it might be my lucky chance. Are you serious, Swallow Immortal? I haven't lied in hundreds of years. Song Yu couldn't help being taken aback. He knew that there were skills to predict fate in this world, and that his master's master had reached great heights in this field. But he also remembered his own origins. Could it be that even this was predicted by his master's master? Did Tianxuan really predict this? Thinking carefully again, he relaxed a little. Maybe it wasn't like that. Perhaps Tianxuan did not foresee him specifically, but only saw up to a certain point and then could see no further. Not finding an answer was, in itself, a kind of answer. From this, it could be inferred that those who come after must be extraordinary, which was why he left this remark. However, he did not speak with absolute certainty, only leaving the possibility. Maybe Tianxuan didn't predict anything, but knew his disciple was reckless and not up to the task. Naturally, he could only tell the Swallow Immortal to seek help from his grand disciple later and didn't specify a person. Even the term grand disciple might not only refer to his disciple's disciple, but also to successive generations. Year after year would also count as decades later. These three guesses were also reasonable. Just then, the old Swallow Immortal said to him again, I really have no other choice but to seek your help. If you have a way to help me advance further, I will do my best to repay you and not shrink from sacrifice. How can I help you advance further? Song Yu stopped thinking. He looked at the Swallow Immortal and asked with a smile, Are you referring to bountiful incense and offerings or the conferment of a title by the court? Hearing this, Swallow Immortal understood that this Taoist friend indeed had a way. Thus he quickly stood up with the help of his crutch, bowed, and said, Please guide me. Song Yu dared not accept the gesture and quickly stepped aside. He then sighed in his heart. How many reasons were there to remain in this human world after all? What was the allure of longevity? It drove literati to seek arduously for half their lives, made little cats also recite it, and even made this 900-year-old Swallow Immortal so persistent up till now, bowing to him. However, since his master's master was willing to help him, Song Yu naturally was too. Or rather, it wasn't just about helping him. As he mentioned earlier, decades ago, Swallow Immortal borrowed Tianxuan's stratagem to become a deity. Wasn't Tianxuan also borrowing his abilities to benefit the people? From the Swallow Immortal's perspective, it might seem imperfect since it displeased the court after all and he wasn't conferred a title. However, from Tianxuan's perspective, it could be different. Their objectives were not the same to begin with. I grew up in a Taoist temple, descended the mountain to travel at the end of summer last year, and just arrived in Suzhou this year. I haven't been to Changing yet, nor have I met the emperor or any nobles. I also don't know the prime minister or any high-ranking court officials. If you want me to request a title from the court on your behalf, please forgive me for being unable to do it. Song Yu paused. However, if you seek bountiful incense and offerings, I do have some ideas. May I ask, how could I have bountiful incense and offerings? Naturally, by benefiting the people, Song Yu said to the Swallow Immortal. You benefited the people of Anking and received their worship. If you benefit all the people, they will naturally all worship you. What you say is reasonable, but I am limited to Anking. Also, the gods of the heavenly court oversee everything. How could I have the chance to benefit all the people? He was speaking implicitly. In truth, if one genuinely wanted to benefit the world, no matter one's capability, there would always be a way. Even Lady Calico could protect a few villages' foodstuffs from mice. But as Swallow Immortal mentioned, in this world, there was a heavenly palace. Everyone knew that you could gather incense and offerings by benefiting the people. However, which place didn't have its own Taoist, Buddhist, or local deity temples? Everyone was already working on ways to benefit the people. So whose territory are you going to enter to do what another god is already doing? Song Yu shook his head. If my idea holds, it would be something no other god has ever done. If you achieve it, you will benefit the entire world. Neither the heavenly palace nor the court would be able to stop you. It would be a deed of immense merit. Hearing this, the old Swallow Immortal almost stood up from his seat, both excited and anxious. His eyes flickered for a moment, then he sat back down and cautiously said, If it is a deed of immense merit, why would it fall to me? It seemed like he was saying that he wouldn't have the chance, but in truth, he was afraid other gods might claim the merit. Though the Swallow Immortal was over 900 years old, swallows were naturally weak and not good at fighting. Moreover, the human realm took precedence in this world. The gods of the heavenly palace gathered the incense and offerings of all the people. Even if these gods were younger than him, their divine powers were vast. If gods like those from the Thunder Division or the renowned Gold Spirit official were to come looking for trouble, how could he possibly stand against them? Xianxia replied, I've heard that most gods attain their position through virtue. If you truly benefit all the people, they should respect you. If anyone falsely claims your merit with such moral conduct, could they still be gods? Saying this, he smiled and waved his hand. In that case, why not burn it all with a fire? The old swallow immortal was immediately shocked. These words were reasonable and could be said by anyone. But coming from a disciple of Hidden Dragon Temple, how could it be the same as common people saying it casually? The divine Tao originated from humanity. Gods were the gods of humanity and ultimately relied on humanity. Even if mortals were short-lived and gods were long-lasting, and even if humanity weakened and the divine Tao prospered, this world was still the world of mortals. The old swallow immortal had long understood who were the truly favored ones in this world. And Hidden Dragon Temple was the pinnacle of human cultivators. Mister, the old swallow immortal hurriedly dismissed the youth beside him, then respectfully said to Xianxia, Please enlighten me, mister. This place. Please speak freely. This mountain is totally isolated from divine hearing. Swallow immortal, what a good skill. I only know these, and they must seem laughable to you, mister. Then let's chat casually. Chat casually. Take a walk in the mountains and chat casually. All right, the old swallow immortal said no more. He stood up leaning on his crutch and invited him for a stroll on the mountain at the back. The night wind was cool as they slowly ascended the stone steps. Two voices alternated in the night air. Swallows are migratory birds. What do you mean by migratory birds? Migratory birds fly south in winter and return to Great Yan in summer. Then that's correct. Swallow immortal nodded and said, Most of my kind are like this, but after gaining good fortune, becoming a demon and transforming, there is no longer a need to migrate south for winter every year. Do you still remember things from before you became a demon and transformed? That is too long ago. Swallow immortal shook his head, then paused. But even after becoming a demon and transforming, I have still migrated many times. I'm really envious. Not just after becoming a demon and transforming. Even over 100 years ago, when I felt my body starting to deteriorate with age, I went once more. However, that time wasn't for winter. I spent several years flying much farther than an ordinary swallow migrating for winter. Swallow immortal said, As I got older, I wanted to see the paths I had flown before. What kind of places were they? Xianxu's eyes were filled with curiosity. Different swallows fly to different places. The very first place I flew to for winter was only over 10,000 li from here. But I've been to many different places, especially after becoming a demon and transforming. Sometimes I would deliberately choose a different direction, searching for a different south. Sometimes I would talk to swallows I met along the way and go seek the places they mentioned. Swallow immortal didn't care what he asked, simply answering everything while secretly pondering his deeper intentions. However, no matter how much he pondered, he couldn't figure it out. It seemed like they were really just casually chatting on the mountain. We stopped overthinking and continued. After flying a few thousand li, many times it was over the sea, or many small islands, or even other lands with customs and cultures very different from Great Yan. The farthest place swallows stopped was across the sea. And across the sea, there were swallows from different northern regions, heading to different southern destinations. It's hard to explain clearly in a short time. You've truly seen the real world, swallow immortal. Xianxia couldn't help but exclaim, not hiding his envy. It's both my nature and a necessity. Even after becoming a demon. In my youth, I just loved chasing the wind. As they talked, they reached a dense forested area on the mountain. Their ears were full of the sound of the wind, passing through the mountain forest. Xianxia continued to ask as they walked, his tone relaxed as if they were truly just chatting. Swallow immortal, do you know the population of the current dynasty? 190 million. And the population of the previous dynasty? At the beginning of the previous dynasty, just after the Great War had ended, the court conducted a comprehensive survey, registering everyone, young and old, into the household registration system. The population was 20 million. 100 years later, it had more than doubled, reaching 80 million by the end of the dynasty. You are indeed knowledgeable about ancient and current times, Swallow immortal. I have just lived a long time. But why does Great Yan now have more than double the population at the end of the previous dynasty? Naturally, it's because Great Yan values the people's livelihood and economy. When the common people live well, the population naturally grows quickly, Swallow immortal said. After the previous dynasty, there were decades of chaos. When the Great Yan dynasty was founded, the population was only 40 million. 100 years ago, it had grown to as many as 100 million. I don't know if I should say this. This place is isolated from divine hearing. You and I are just chatting casually. Why not speak freely? Actually, it's already a dangerous disaster. Too many people is a calamity. For someone so young, you have such insights. Truly rare. Swallow Immortal naturally complimented in return. When the moon is full, it wanes. So it is with all things in the world. When prosperity reaches its peak, decline follows. Do you know how this issue was solved later? At that time, the prime minister of Great Yan, who was named He Fa, issued good policies, returned land to the people, and introduced superior rice species from the east, greatly increasing the yield per mu. That got them through the crisis and created the unprecedented prosperity we have now. Swallow Immortal sighed repeatedly. Unfortunately, Prime Minister, he did not meet a good end. Thankfully, the people remembered his benevolence, built temples spontaneously for him, and helped him become a god after his death. Now he ranks as an immortal and is also highly respected in the heavenly palace. But now Great Yan has a population of 190 million, which is nearly double that at the time. I have seen many poor common people with little land, many mouths to feed, and no food at home on my travels. Isn't it another crisis like 100 years ago? Mister, are you saying the world is about to fall into chaos? If things continue like this, with deepening conflicts, no land for the common people to farm, and no food to eat, chaos is likely. Unless another prime minister he emerges, an even greater one. Songyu paused, but that's not what I wanted to say. Oh. Swallow Immortal looked at Songyu in confusion. Chapter 60. How could a common person understand an immortal's intent? Songyu walked forward. In the night, the starlight was faint, and he couldn't actually see the grasses and trees by the roadside clearly, but there was no need to see them clearly. Everything was already in his heart. Plum, orchid, bamboo, and chrysanthemum, pine, cypress, poplar, and willow. The alfalfa that the juju-bred horse loved to eat, the dandelion he had just picked today on Matty Mountain. Oh right, there were wild chrysanthemums blooming on that small path going up the mountain. Narcissus, Chinese rose, lotus, and Chinese peony. Mandarin oranges, pomelos, peas, and cucumbers. These familiar things. Songyu turned his head to look at the old Swallow Immortal and asked again, "Are there people across the sea?" Naturally, there are. Some places even trade with Great Yan or declare themselves our vassals. And other lands. Of course, the old Swallow Immortal replied. Not only are there people, but also prosperous dynasties. They just have different customs from this place. The people also look different, and they worship different gods. Do they also eat rice? Naturally not. At this point, the old Swallow Immortal suddenly widened his eyes. You have been to all the places swallows have been, likely flying farther than any migratory bird in this world. Have you noticed what they eat compared to what we eat in Great Yan? What's their yield per mu? Can it fill the stomach? Is it drought resistant? Are you suggesting? I know of several crops that yield more per mu than eastern rice. If you could find them, this can solve the extreme emergency for Great Yan at present and temporarily ensure the stability of the people's livelihood. Even if it cannot completely cure the problem, it would still benefit the common people. Songyu paused for a moment and continued. And for future generations throughout the ages, the merit might not be any less significant than it is now. The old Swallow Immortal's breathing had already become rapid. But he remained rational and asked, "For such a great favor, how could I repay you? What did my masters, Master Tianxuan, ask for in return back then?" It's shameful. The old Swallow Immortal looked remorseful. I haven't been able to repay Taoist friend Tianxuan up till now. In that case, how could I ask for repayment? Songyu smiled at the Swallow Immortal. I just mentioned that benefiting the world should not be discussed in terms of favors and gratitude. This is merely a joint effort between you and me to bring some welfare to the people. In fact, you will contribute more, and naturally, your name should be remembered. What? The old Swallow Immortal stood in a daze. Songyu simply continued to walk forward, his voice drifting back. If you really feel apologetic, I do have one request. Please tell me, the old Swallow Immortal hurriedly asked, seeking peace of mind. You have flown thousands of li. Have you seen a plant in other lands? It grows on short trees, with small, spicy fruits that taste like fire in the mouth. Songyu turned his head, looking very sincerely at the old Swallow Immortal. If you have, could you bring back some seeds for me in passing? Just this. Yes. Is it some rare spiritual plant? It's a common plant, mostly used for seasoning. And you want it for? Seasoning. What? The old Swallow Immortal couldn't help feeling puzzled. Not wealthy, he had lived for 1,000 years after all, and had accumulated some family assets and collections over this period. When he first transformed into human form, he was a refined and cultured demon. Swallows were close to humans, so he inevitably became acquainted with many famous and virtuous people during that time. He had acquired items that were not considered precious at the time, but became treasures over time in many people's eyes. He originally thought this young Taoist priest would more or less ask for something precious that he may not be able to produce, or that he would have some difficult request. Of course, no matter how difficult the request would be, he would try his best even if he couldn't fulfill it. Unexpectedly, it was a request like this. Song Yu's voice came from ahead. If you could find it for me, you would be doing me a great favor, and I would be deeply grateful. The old swallow immortal was puzzled and turned his head to look at him. But he saw the young Taoist's sincere face, neither seeming to be lying nor finding a random task to ease his own mind. It seemed that the plant used for seasoning was genuinely more precious to him than anything else that he had thought of. Even with his 1,000-year wisdom, he couldn't help being taken aback. Then he pondered and slowly recovered. He simply sighed silently in his heart. What does it matter if he had lived for 1,000 years? How could a demon possess a pure glass heart, and how could a common person understand an immortal's intent? Once he thought it through in his heart, he turned solemnly and cupped hands earnestly. Since you have asked, I will do my utmost to find it and bring back anything resembling it. Thank you, but please prioritize finding staple crops. My request is only if it's convenient and can be left to fate. Of course. Know that this journey won't be easy. The crops may be on the southern migration path of great Yan swallows or not. They may be perhaps easy to find or isolated and far away overseas. The vast world is filled with hardships and dangers. Your descendants will have to endure some suffering. I will try my best. They reached the mountain top at that moment, and the galaxy glittered overhead. Song Yu stood at the pavilion's edge and admired the stars for a while. He described several overseas crops that he was familiar with, but told him not to be fixated on them. He also warned him not to casually bring back live animals or some plants that he remembered as dangerous. The old swallow immortal, naturally, thanked him profusely. After discussing, they walked back and soon returned to the courtyard house. It's already late. My body is still in the pavilion you built. My cat is very mischievous and always paws at my face. If I don't return, she'll worry. I will see you off. The old swallow immortal leaned on his crutch and walked him out. Walking not far away, Song Yu saw that youth again. He smiled and bowed to the youth. Many thanks, young friend. The youth blushed, lowered his head, and dared not speak. The old swallow immortal felt resentful toward the youth for failing to meet expectations again. Song Yu merely smiled, saying, Young friend, there's no need for this, and neither should swallow immortal feel this way. You should know that the Tao follows nature. Everything in existence is natural. Swallows are naturally free, and you, my young friend, should be more free as well. After bowing to both of them, he left. Taking a step forward, he crossed the threshold and immediately vanished on the spot. When he came, he had to leave his body and transform into a swallow, flying laboriously here. When leaving, he was returning to his body. His soul and body were originally one, and such a short distance could be bridged with just a single thought. After he left, the old and young swallows remained deep in thought. The youth pondered Song Yu's words, thinking about this person he had never seen before and the words he had never heard before. In fact, he was quite intelligent. The old swallow immortal also pondered Song Yu's words and the person himself. He had never underrated this young Taoist friend, though he was much younger than him. It was out of respect for Hidden Dragon Temple as well as his own cultivation. Earlier, they had casually chatted about that deed of immense merit. Although it sounded illusory, Song Yu spoke earnestly and methodically, and the old swallow immortal already believed half of it. When Song Yu introduced those several kinds of foreign crops later, he already faintly recalled some of them when Song Yu was actually halfway through. In his heart, he was even more convinced and utterly shocked. At that moment, it was hard to describe how he felt in his heart, and he was so excited that his whole body trembled. Such an endeavor could indeed benefit all the people in the world. Currently, there was more land than people in Great Yan, with many unable to fill their stomachs. If this continued within a decade or so, internal strife would inevitably break out. When the time comes, the people would once again be in a terrible situation, and corpses would be strewn everywhere. This was already known to all individuals with knowledge and experience in the world. Unfortunately, there was no second prime minister. Even if there were, they wouldn't dare stand up. Therefore, from the emperor in the imperial court to the masters among the common people, all were deeply worried about this. If he could really accomplish this, and it really had the effect Song Yu mentioned, it would truly be a deed of immense merit. Surveying all the gods and Buddhas, how many possessed such merit? If he became a god through this, receiving all the merit, or even receiving just half of the merit, the support of the people would make him more formidable than even the legendary phoenix. If he put in a little more effort and fanned the flames slightly, there might be a new legend that will be passed down for 1,000 years in this world. And who would have thought that all this just stemmed from that night's conversation? When he thought of this, the swallow immortal was still in awe. But upon closer thought, the atmosphere of that night's conversation seemed just as Songyu had said, merely a casual night stroll and chat in the mountains. He had come lightly, chatted, and left lightly. The old swallow immortal carefully savored it. Meeting Songyu that day, he hadn't yet seen the skills of this generation's heir to Hidden Dragon Temple. He didn't know what kind of method Songyu cultivated or what skills he had learned. However, during that night's leisurely stroll, the old swallow immortal already felt that his demeanor and bearing were not inferior to that of Taoist Tianxuan decades ago. However, Taoist Tianxuan excelled in divination, which was his forte. Besides, the paths of the two were different. Taoist Tianxuan had already traveled the world and was returning when he reached Suzhou. He had already achieved great success in his cultivation, while this one had just descended the mountain. This generation seemed even more extraordinary. The old swallow immortal took a deep breath and regretted letting him go so easily then. He should have expressed his gratitude more. However, even though he had quite a lot of family assets and collections, which originally gave him some confidence, after closely observing the expression of that Taoist friend today, he felt that he was even more detached than Taoist Tianxuan. He feared that his own assets and collections would appear as mere mundane objects to that Taoist. To please him, it would have to be something that touched his heart. The old swallow immortal pondered, but couldn't decide on a course of action. At that moment, he glanced at the young man, who was also deep in thought, and suddenly remembered something. Yanan. Ah, ancestor. What did the Taoist priest thank you for just now? I don't know. Pluck up your courage. Probably it was because this morning, the Taoist priest asked me if the scenery in the sky was more beautiful than on the ground. What did you say? I said I didn't know. You didn't know? The old swallow immortal was both exasperated and helpless. Then why did he thank you? The youth hurriedly lowered his head and replied, Later, I fetched a swallow pill and brought him to fly up into the sky for a look. The Taoist priest seemed to like it very much, so he thanked me. Swallow pill? Yes. The scenery in the sky, the old swallow immortal pondered. Consequently, he immediately ordered the youth to fetch all the swallow pills and to offer them to the Taoist priest tomorrow as early as possible. The youth readily agreed. Pandepar 98 Thoughts. Chapters 160, 6670, and 7677 translated by I.J. All other chapters translated by Pandepar 98. Chapter 61. Jianghu affairs are also mankind's affairs. The third day of the Great Liujiang gathering was also the final day of the martial arts competition. Song Yu did not go to the pavilion halfway up the mountain. Instead, he accepted the enthusiastic invitation of Heroine Wu and went with her to observe the event from the center of Swallow Immortal Terrace. This spot at the edge of the yin-yang symbol was exclusively reserved for Zishan sect. The martial arts competition took place on the yin-yang symbol in front of them, so they had a clear view, and even the wind from punches and sword slashes could brush past their heads. Zishan sect arrived with dozens of skilled fighters. Taoism was popular in Yizhu, so Zishan sect maintained good relations with several Taoist temples on Qingcheng Mountain. Songyu, being a Taoist and a native of Yizhu, was greeted by the sect leader and Heroine Wu's master. They exchanged a few words with him about Qingcheng Mountain and its temples before taking their seats. There weren't many chairs, and most were occupied by the leaders and elders of various major sects and other distinguished guests. Those with lesser standing either stood at the back or sat on the ground in the front, as formality was not a concern. Heroine Wu sat cross-legged on the ground at the very front, and as her guest, Songyu sat beside her. A calico cat sat obediently, grooming itself. Behind them, faint conversations could be heard. Look, another swallow. There's always been just one. It's probably the same one from yesterday and the day before. It has come back again today. This swallow is unusual. I think so too. Hearing this, Songyu also looked up. Today was another cloudy day, with the sky smeared with random brushstrokes of deep and light gray, as if someone had lazily painted it with a wet brush. A black and white swallow flew freely across this painting, bringing the sky to life as if it were the finishing touch to that painting. Songyu smiled and continued watching the competition ahead. Today's matches were indeed more exciting than the previous days. The fighters were either top-notch disciples from various major sects, or cocky and ignorant young upstarts. Heroine Wu explained that some were unaffiliated but highly skilled, joining in for fun with hidden identities. They were likely with the government or had military backgrounds. The stage was so close that Song Yu and the cat often worried about being accidentally injured during the fights. However, everyone was careful. Knowing that stepping out of the yin-yang symbol meant defeat, no one wanted to leave so easily. Help him understand. Heroine Wu whispered explanations to Song Yu, vividly showcasing the enthusiasm and frankness of the people of the Jianghu and Yizhu. The elder from the Jindao sect is a master of the machete. He once earned the respect of the entire Jianghu. Though he's older now and not as agile, his experience in combat has only grown. Opposite him is Xu Yifan, whose background is unknown. He's fought the most in these 3 days and hasn't lost yet. From his swordsmanship, I'd say he's unmatched among the younger generation in the Jianghu. Song Yu looked ahead. While the connoisseur recognized the artistry, the layman simply enjoyed the show. Sometimes, it was more fun to simply enjoy the show, and he was here to have fun. Earlier, there was a young man whose skills impressed me. You mentioned he was a disciple of the largest sect in the Jianghu, Song Yu remarked. Zai Yiji from the Yun sect, Heroine Wu asked. Yes, Song Yu nodded and looked at the young swordsman ahead. How do they compare? The Yun sect is the disgrace of the Jianghu, Heroine Wu whispered. Oh, Song Yu was puzzled. That Zai Yiji seemed to win easily because he picked weak opponents to look impressive, Heroine Wu remarked. I see, Song Yu said. He's not even worth discussing, Heroine Wu said. And the two on stage, Song Yu asked. It's hard to say, Heroine Wu observed the fight ahead. Youngsters have quick reflexes, great physical strength, powerful bursts of energy, and good stamina. Middle-aged fighters may have declined in those areas, but their experience and refined skills make up for it. From what I see, chances are probably 60-40 in favor of Xu Yifan. Impressive, Song Yu remarked. Just as she finished speaking, the two on stage bowed and began their fight. The sound of blade and sword clashing filled the air. Both fighters were agile, their movements dazzling. The elder wielding the machete struck with immense force, each swing carrying the power to cleave mountains and split rivers, and his attacks were continuous and unrelenting. The swordsman's movements were as swift as lightning, as agile as the swallow in the sky, yet each thrust of his sword was equally fierce and sharp. The crowd outside cheered continuously. As Heroine Wu predicted, the young swordsman quickly gained the upper hand. Clang! The sword struck the machete. Using his force in a clever manner to disarm the elder, the young swordsman sent the heavy golden machete spinning high into the air and flying toward the audience, startling the nearby swallow. Whoa! The crowd quickly moved aside. The machete, making a loud noise, descended toward where Song Yu and Heroine Wu sat. Swish! Heroine Wu instantly rose, ready to draw her sword to catch the flying machete. The young swordsman also left the yin-yang symbol and rushed over, intending to deflect the machete. Unexpectedly, a faster figure intervened. It was the swallow. Startled and off course, it darted back with lightning speed and collided with the machete. The swallow's swift and graceful agility was evident, but when it collided heavily with the golden machete, it forcefully knocked the machete off its course. The golden machete then fell toward the leader of the Zishan sect. Sitting calmly on the bamboo chair, he caught it effortlessly and glanced at the swallow before he tossed the machete back to the elder of the Jindao sect with a smile. You're not as strong as before anymore. The elder from the Jindao sect, looking slightly embarrassed, smiled and shook his head. Indeed, I'm old now. I'm no match for the young. The swordsman respectfully bowed. The audience was either amazed by the swallow's timely intervention or the fact that a once-renowned master of the jianghu could be so easily defeated by an unknown young swordsman. Few noticed Song Yu cupping his hand to the sky, thanking the swallow, though the intervention hadn't been necessary. Heroine Wu reassured Song Yu. Don't worry, even without the swallow, the machete wouldn't have hit you. Of course, he replied. Look, Xu Yifan still hasn't stepped off the stage, Heroine Wu said and glanced up. She knew the event was likely not a coincidence, but had seen enough strange things in the jianghu to not ask too many questions. The cat beside them could breathe fire, after all. Their acquaintance was still shallow, so there was no need to inquire about everything. So she quickly turned her attention back to the front. The young swordsman remained on stage and politely invited challenges from all directions, seeking further opponents. Though his tone was courteous, it did not hide his sharpness. However, no one stepped forward. Heroine Wu explained, typically young fighters challenge each other while seniors fight among themselves. Like just now, when the elder from the Jindao sect went on stage, we juniors couldn't rush up unless specifically called. Otherwise, we'd get scolded. That guy's not following the rules. Now, no young fighters dare face him, because they fear defeat. The seniors are unwilling as well because they are even more afraid of losing. Indeed, the young have the advantage. Songyu observed the crowd. This was a world filled with spiritual qi, where everyone possessed innate spirituality. Thus, even without cultivating Taoist techniques, those in the jianghu who spent their lives honing their martial arts skills, strengthening their bodies, and refining their qi and life force could achieve significant accomplishments. But as they aged, their qi and physical strength would gradually decline, though not as drastically as in Song Yu's world in his previous life. According to Heroine Wu, both middle-aged martial artists and young ones had their own advantages, and their overall combat power was similar. This indicated that the decline was not significant and could be compensated for by increased experience and skills. In old age, they still could not compare to the young. However, the elders had their own rules, and respect for elders was a jianghu rule. Unable to find opponents, the young swordsman reluctantly left. 2 more fighters took the stage, and Heroine Wu continued her explanations. Songyu listened attentively, finding her commentary more fascinating than the fight itself. Soon, it was time to conclude. There was no ultimate master stepping forward for a final duel to conclude with a spectacular finale. The martial arts competition of the Great Liuzhang Gathering ended just like that. Heroine Wu explained that even the top masters in the jianghu had mixed results and were often matched against each other. The outcome could depend on their condition, performance, or even luck, making it hard to rank them definitively. And the martial arts masters of the jianghu each had their own influence and territories, whether in Yizhou or Suzhou, or in the north or south. Northerners found it difficult to admit that their renowned heroes were not as good as those from the south, and Southerners would never acknowledge that their childhood legends were inferior to those from the north. That was generally how it was. Some who were reputed to be great were actually not very skilled. However, they were all famous figures in jianghu. Having reached this level with significant family assets and businesses to manage, they had many considerations and rarely exposed one another's weaknesses. Some renowned jianghu figures were more famous for their wealth and virtues than their martial prowess. For example, Mr. Xia was known for his generosity and righteousness. Whenever a jianghu person sought refuge with him, they were treated to fine food and drink. Whenever a jianghu person encountered difficulties, he spared no effort in helping them out, whether it was treating injuries or illnesses. He even personally brewed medicine for them. If you happened to pass by his house and knocked on his door, even if he had never met you before or if you were a nobody in the jianghu, he would treat you like an honored guest. Before you left, he would ensure you were well provisioned for your journey, seeing you off for a distance of 10 li with generosity that earned him more respect than many leaders of major sects in the jianghu. He represented the good side of the world. Songyu found these stories more intriguing than the fights. The competition has ended, and it's time for Lady Calico and me to leave. Thank you for the invitation and the detailed explanations, Heroine. I've gained a lot from this glimpse into the jianghu. Songyu then stood up and bowed to her. I've said it many times, in the jianghu, we become friends upon meeting. We've met several times, so no need to be so formal, Heroine Wu replied cheerfully. Next time for sure, Songyu said. Where are you staying? A Taoist temple outside the city. That's good. It must be better than living in the city, Heroine Wu remarked. Indeed, it's peaceful. When do you plan to leave Anqing? In a few days. Where will you go next? First, I'll tour Suzhou. As for after that, I am embarrassed to say that I haven't planned yet, Songyu admitted. You're quite carefree, taking it one step at a time. And you, Heroine Wu, returning to Yizhou. The Great Liuzhang Gathering isn't over yet. I'll leave the day after tomorrow, but I am not going back to Yizhou. I won't be traveling with my master and the others. Anyway, our time together is almost at its end, Heroine Wu said with a grin. But in the jianghu, it's normal to constantly meet and part ways with someone. Don't be like those scholars, fussing over every little thing. Heroine Wu, you're indeed a free spirit, Songyu remarked. Join us for a meal tonight. I'd love to, but tonight I have other plans. Oh, what is it? Yesterday, after the rain cleared, a Taoist friend from the temple went up the mountain to search for mushrooms and actually found quite a few. When I left this morning, he reminded me to return early to eat the mushrooms, Songyu expressed apologetically. If I don't go back, they'll probably be waiting anxiously at the temple. During this time, I've been well taken care of by the temple owner and Taoist friends. How could I disappoint them like this? Heroine Wu nodded. I understand. Let's meet another day. I'll see you in the city tomorrow. Come around noon to the inn near the North City Gate where I'm staying. I'll treat you to meat and wine as a farewell, she proposed straightforwardly. Considering the vastness of the jianghu, after I leave this city, we will likely never see each other ever again. I'll be there. Go on then. Heroine Wu waved her hand, truly carefree. Chapter 62. The humble learns from everyone. Lady Calico, Songyu said. Meow. Stop crossing your paws, let's go. Meow. The calico cat immediately got up and followed him. The jianghu people around them found it quite amusing. Master Chen watched as Songyu left. After savoring the moment, he turned his gaze to Heroine Wu. It's truly fate that you're able to meet in the jianghu. He's such a remarkable person too. Why didn't you invite him to stay for dinner? People might think the Zishan sect is stingy and lacks hospitality. Master, you must be hard of hearing. Heroine Wu pretended to bow respectfully. I did invite him, but he had other matters to attend to and couldn't join us. Does he think our food is subpar? He said the Taoist monk at the temple where he stayed yesterday picked some mushrooms. This morning, the monk invited him to return early to eat them. Mountain mushrooms, stewed in chicken soup, they might indeed taste better than our food. If made into a tofu and egg soup, it's comparable to what we have. However, when stir-fried, they might fall a bit short in comparison. Master Chen leisurely stretched his neck, speaking in a thick accent. But since he agreed, it's not right for him to break his promise. I also think so, she replied. He stayed at a Taoist temple. There's no temple in the city, Master Chen remarked. The one outside the city, Heroine Wu responded. Outside the city, there's only the Zhaojiao temple, he said. Most likely it's that temple, she said. It's not easy to get lodging at Zhaojiao temple, Master Chen said. Master Chen's eyes flickered a few times before he looked up at the swallow hovering in the sky. Curiously, as the gentleman walked away, the swallow seemed to follow in that direction. Yizhu, Linquan County. Master Chen couldn't help but shake his head. Ever since he became fascinated with Taoism 10 years ago, he had made many connections with high-ranking Taoists in Yizhu. Initially, he thought they were impure immortals, but he realized they were just ordinary people after spending time with them. He hadn't known there was such an extraordinary temple in Yizhu. He should visit it after returning. Just then, he heard a voice right by his ear. Why is it difficult to get lodging at that temple? You startled me. You're standing too close, he quipped. I'm just here to bring you a chair, Heroine Wu said. In any case, staying there is no easy feat. Even your master's master tried and was turned away. What's the deal with that temple? She asked. Who knows? It's been there for centuries, while we've only been here for years. But whoever is running that temple does have some skills. I remember when I was young, there were even fewer inns in the city than now. Many jianghu people had to find a place for the night. Some went to Zhaojiao temple, thinking they would be accommodated. Naturally, when some of these people were denied and felt slighted, they would cause a commotion or utter some harsh words. However, in the end, they all suffered for it. Although the temple has changed owners, it still doesn't like to host guests, Master Chen replied. How did the temple make them suffer? They were too embarrassed to say, Master Chen said. So, has no one gone to stir up trouble there since then? Those who lack skill don't dare to do so, and those with skill have too much pride, Master Chen said as they walked. They're in the wrong, after all. Making a fuss would only make them a laughingstock in the jianghu. That makes sense. That young gentleman seems capable and trustworthy. Especially in the jianghu, trustworthiness is rare. Since he's also from our hometown, you could befriend him if you get along, Master Chen said thoughtfully, then shook his head. But since you've decided to go to Changing, you probably won't meet again. I think so too. The woman smiled, saying nothing more. Jianghu people were straightforward and easygoing in their friendships, forming bonds based on mutual affinity. However, when it came to farewells, they weren't as sentimental as the literati. The members of the Zishan sect were also heading out. The Jianghu people walked quickly, while Song Yu moved more slowly. They hadn't walked far, and the figures of Song Yu and Lady Calico, one towering over the other, were still faintly visible. However, at some point, another slender figure had appeared beside them. Dressed in a black and white outfit resembling a swallow's plumage, the figure was hard to see clearly from a distance, but still exuded an elegant demeanor. The figure seemed to be holding their waist and walking with a slight awkwardness, as if they had injured themselves somewhere. \\\\. It doesn't hurt. Thank you, young friend, Song Yu said. My pleasure, the young man replied. Young man took out a small white bottle from his sleeve. It was a finely crafted jade bottle with a thin hemp string tied around its neck, forming a loop, seemingly for a swallow to grasp. When he was casually flying in the sky earlier, he hadn't been carrying the bottle. After transforming into human form, he had run down the small path on Matty Mountain, which likely meant that the bottle had been left there. With the bottle cupped in his hands, he respectfully handed the bottle to Song Yu. Sir, this is a gift from my ancestor, who heard you enjoy sightseeing. He specifically asked me to bring it here and give it to you, the young man said. The swallow pill, Songyu remarked. You guessed correctly, sir, the young man replied. This is too precious, Songyu noted. The swallow pill is valuable to humans, but for swallows it is something naturally obtained, though it does take some time, the young man said quietly. Well, it is still somewhat special. My ancestor said the swallow pill best represents us and our sincerity. Then please thank the swallow immortal for me, Songyu added. You're welcome, sir. But although I can use this pill to astral travel and become a swallow, I don't know how to fly like one. How can I use it? Songyu asked. I'll teach you, sir. Thank you so much, Songyu said. My pleasure, the young man replied. They fell into silence. Songyu didn't mind. He felt calm and at ease, even in silence. He cast his gaze at the trees by the roadside, the distant mountain village with its smoke from cooking fires, and the Calico cat running ahead, stopping under the same tree she had scratched that morning to add a few more claw marks. Everything felt very natural. The young man, however, felt increasingly awkward. He wanted to say something but didn't know what to say. He had rehearsed his words in his mind, but they wouldn't come out. He wanted to stay and accompany the gentleman for a while longer, yet he also wanted to bid farewell and leave quickly. Staying felt awkward, but leaving without a proper farewell seemed wrong. Finally, Songyu turned around and said, It's getting late. You should go back now, young friend. Come to Zhaojiao Temple to see me tomorrow morning. As a swallow, it won't be difficult for you to enter the temple. Farewell, sir. The young man felt a sense of relief. He looked around to make sure they had reached a secluded area, then transformed into a swallow and flew away. The Calico cat instinctively raised her head to watch. That's my friend, Songyu said. I know, Lady Calico replied. Then why are you still watching? I'm seeing him off. Quite polite, aren't you? Of course. The Calico cat reluctantly turned her gaze away, caught sight of her tail, and was startled. Realizing it was just her tail, she gave it a casual swipe with her paw before trotting along behind Songyu again. Dinner that night mainly consisted of mushrooms, particularly wild mountain mushrooms. Half were used to make egg soup, and the other half were stir-fried with meat slices. The wild mushrooms had a strong flavor, perfect for soup. The soup was infused with their taste, and apart from salt, no other seasoning was needed to make it incredibly delicious. The stir-fried meat slices were rich and flavorful, with the initial taste almost too intense, but they paired perfectly with rice. They also had some milk-cap mushrooms. When one lightly cut or scratched the surface with a knife or fingernail, white, milk-like droplets would appear at the wound. After the little child washed them clean, he shared them with him and ate them raw. Their texture was crunchy, and they were slightly sweet. \\\*. The next morning, a swallow flew in. Just as Songyu had anticipated, since it was a barn swallow, and they knew the swallow immortal was in Anqing County, the Taoist monks in the temple did not stop it, and let the swallow fly to Songyu's door even if they sensed something unusual. Chirp, chirp, chirp. What is it, young friend? Please follow me, sir, the swallow said. I thought swallows couldn't speak human language when not in human form, Songyu joked. That was dumb of me, I forgot for a moment. Let's go then, Songyu said. Songyu stepped outside and followed the swallow up the mountain. Once they reached the top, the swallow transformed back into human form. Greetings, sir, the young man said. Today you are the teacher. I should be the one greeting you, Songyu said respectfully, bowing. Greetings, teacher. No, I don't deserve this, the young man replied. One's learning doesn't depend on the time he learns. Whoever knows best can be the teacher, Songyu insisted. You are a master. How can I be your teacher? That's not true, Songyu shook his head. First, I'm not a master. Second, you are exceptional. Third, there are no omniscient people, only proud people. Over the past 6 months, from when I descended the mountain until now, I have encountered many teachers. You, young friend, are far from the first. Before the young man could respond, Songyu continued, Please begin. The young man, still pondering Songyu's words, nodded hastily and agreed to begin. He handed Songyu the swallow pill. When a swallow's feathers are fully grown, it naturally learns to fly. Yesterday, I asked my ancestor, and he said the greatest challenge for you is knowing you have wings and are a bird. So I will first take you flying, just like the day before yesterday. We'll fly a bit higher today. I'll gradually reduce my assistance so you can feel your own wings flapping, the young man said. Okay. If you accidentally fall, don't panic. We will fly high so you won't hit the ground immediately. Since you're in a spiritual form, you won't be hurt even if you do fall. It's an opportunity to try flapping your wings to fly again. I've heard some birds living on cliffs learn to fly this way." His words were indeed lengthy, and the young man had to muster up his courage to say them. Songyu smiled and nodded. That makes sense. This method sounded feasible. Thus, he sat cross-legged. He had already taken the swallow pill earlier on. He had long discerned that this elixir was not an ordinary one, but a form of supernatural transformation. Even though he had already taken it, with his level of cultivation, he wouldn't astral travel or transform into a swallow if he didn't want to. At this moment, upon sitting down, his soul naturally left his body. Learning to fly with the mind of a human wasn't something that could be accomplished overnight. Even just thinking of oneself as a swallow would take time. But what would he learn today? First, he would greet the wind and appreciate the vastness of the world. Chapter 63, Far from Ordinary. That noon, in a city in Anqing County, there was an inn near the north gate of the city, which was quite easy to find. Opposite the inn was a meat soup restaurant, one of the better dining spots in Anqing County. At a table made of aged elm wood, Songyu and Heroine Wu sat across from each other on the wide benches. The Calico cat, Lady Calico, crouched by the side of Songyu's bench. Since they were eating out, she couldn't sit at the table but didn't run around either. Songyu brought her a deep dish and placed it in front of her. Inside was a large chunk of dragon bone, with half of the dish filled with soup. She crouched down and ate in a serious manner. On the table was a large pot of pork bone and radish soup. The bones were primarily big chunks of thigh bones and dragon bones, covered with plenty of meat, all simmered until tender. The white radish had turned semi-transparent, soaking up the meat broth and tasting just as good as the meat. The clear broth, dotted with scum, was garnished with jade-green spring onions. Its color made it look very appetizing. Slurp. Heroine Wu held a thigh bone in her left hand and brought it to her mouth. With a slurp, the meat came right off without much force. She chewed twice, then quickly lowered her head and used her right hand to swiftly shovel rice into her mouth with chopsticks. The rice was white rice, known as maortu. There was no particular method to it. It was simply a heaping bowl of white rice, piled high into a sharp peak. More meticulous restaurants would press it tightly, making one bowl equivalent to 2 regular bowls. If it was a dishonest merchant, they would first tightly pack a bowl with rice and then flip it into another bowl. This way, the bottom would be hollow, but the top would appear heaped high, forming a pointed shape. This created the illusion of having a lot of rice, resembling the top of a hat, hence the name. The price was by the bowl, but one should never underestimate such a bowl of white rice. There were stalls that specifically sold maortu rice. When some people came to town for business and wanted a hearty meal, they would get a bowl of maortu rice with some Chinese pickles, and this was considered a good meal. After all, times were tough, and not many people could afford to eat white rice regularly. It was a delicious and luxurious treat. So satisfying, Heroine Wu exclaimed with a long sigh. She then put down the thigh bone and said to Songyu, "The first day we arrived, the sect leader brought us here to eat. He said this place has been open for over 10 years. After I tried it, I found that the food here is indeed good. That's why I brought you here today." "It is indeed good," he acknowledged. "The meat is fresh, so it doesn't need much cooking. Cooked with just the right amount of salt and a bit of ginger, it's naturally delicious," she continued. "True. Have you decided when to leave?" "Not for now. What will you be doing in the next few days?" "I found a good teacher recently, and I am learning some new skills. Once I've learned enough, I'll leave." "Oh," the woman dragged out the sound with a long, lingering tone. She didn't inquire further about what skills he was learning and continued the casual chat instead. "Will you go to Changing?" "I will." "You're so certain?" she asked. "Changing is the capital of Great Yan, the best city in the world. If I were to travel the world, how could I not go and see it?" Songyu replied. "When will you go?" "When the time feels right." "Sounds good." Songyu observed the woman's expression and softly asked, "Are you also going to Changing?" "Yes, I'm leaving tomorrow." "What will you do there?" he asked. "I'll explore the place." Heroine Wu paused her eating. "Though Yizhu is nice, the sky here feels too small. I've been in Yizhu for over 20 years, and while it's not bad, it's a bit dull. Whether to make a name for myself or to see more of the world, I need to leave Yizhu and explore." "You have a lofty ambition," he remarked. "Not really. Are your fellow sectmates going too?" "They're not, it's just me," she replied. "Are you heading straight to Changing?" "More or less. But if I encounter something interesting on the way, or run into sects that have friendly or hostile ties with the Zishan sect, I'll definitely have to pay a visit." Heroine Wu chuckled. Songyu nodded. "Jianghu and Yangdu are also good." "True, but Changing is better." Songyu could see the longing for Changing in her eyes. This was understandable, because Great Yan was truly powerful, and such power was something that citizens of countries not standing at the pinnacle of the world would find hard to understand. It was not just a matter of military might or economic prosperity. It encompassed various aspects such as cultural and social dominance as well. Many of its policies influenced the entire world, and many trends started there, causing other nations to follow suit. Even if many people in Great Yan were struggling, compared to the citizens of foreign lands, they could still hold their heads high. The capital of such a country, the largest and most prosperous city in the world at the time, undoubtedly represented the pinnacle of civilization. For many, it was a dreamlike place. This wasn't just true for the people of Great Yan, but also for many foreigners. People from all over the world yearned for it. Some traveled tens of thousands of li, seeking the celestial empire described by merchants. There were even princes from other great nations who, upon arriving here, were reluctant to leave. Even demons gathered there, and even Xianxia was eager to witness its prosperity and the pinnacle of the civilization it represented. If you're going to Changing too, we might run into each other there, Heroine Wu said, starting to eat again. Do you have any acquaintances in Changing? Xianxia asked. No. Then I'll be your first acquaintance in Changing. Pretty much, Heroine Wu blinked twice. I hadn't thought about it before, but now that you mention it, it does feel quite wonderful. Perhaps. Which way are you heading? She asked. I'm going to Pingzhu first. Are you walking there like this? Heroine Wu drew a stroke in the air with a bone. More or less. That's quite a detour, Heroine Wu thought for a moment. But I am also very slow, and I plan to stay in Changing for a long time. How long? Xianxia asked. Until I finish what I want to do, she replied. I see. Let me think. She paused, holding a bone in midair. Xianxia didn't disturb her. He didn't look at her either. He poked his chopsticks through a piece of radish and placed it in his bowl. He glanced at the Calico cat beside him and gave her another piece of meaty dragon bone. Like this, Heroine Wu's voice suddenly broke the silence. When I get to Changing, I won't have any connections there. I probably won't be able to find work for a while, so I'll have plenty of free time. I'll go to the West Gate and wander there every evening at dusk. If you arrive within a month of me, you'll find me. After that, I'll only go there on the first day of each month. Make sure you come before dark on the first day of the month. Xianxia was taken aback by her words. You'll go there every day. What are you thinking? Only for the first month. After that, just once a month on the first day of each month. On the first day of each month. It's just 12 or 13 days a year. I'll just take a walk around there every day. We jianghu people are always out and about anyway. Xianxia couldn't help but feel dazed. Only in this era would someone spend a month waiting for a friend. In later times, people would be impatient after just an hour. In truth, he and this lady in front of him weren't very close. They were simply brought together by fate, and both found each other to be rare individuals with integrity. Xianxia found her interesting, a rare soul in this era, making their interactions easy and enjoyable. That was why he was willing to befriend her and form a bond with her. As for how she saw him, he didn't know. However, when it came down to it, the two of them hadn't interacted that much. Even so, she was willing to do this. Xianxia was deeply moved. This was not the kind of friendship he was familiar with. After thinking for a while, he couldn't help but ask, why? What do you mean, why? Heroine Wu looked at him, puzzled, still holding up the bone with her hand. It seemed she found his question strange, as if she had just done something natural. Xianxia looked both sincere and puzzled. Please don't take this the wrong way. I've lived deep in the mountains for a long time, cultivating Tao. This is my first time coming down, and I rarely make friends. That's why I'm confused. Even though we were brought together by fate, we've only just met for a short time. Indeed, once you arrive in Changing, you will find yourself without any relatives or acquaintances. But with your charm, you could easily make new friends in Changing. Why would you go to the city gate every day to wait for me? Only for the first month, and I'm not waiting, just wandering around. I already like wandering, she said. All right, Xianxia didn't argue. Seeing his still earnest and questioning gaze, as if saying, please enlighten me, the woman decided to explain. She didn't overthink it and just spoke her mind. You underestimate this world. It seems like people are coming and going around us every day. But if you actually think about it, after all these comings and goings in a day, how many of them do you really get to know? True. Making acquaintances is inherently difficult. Plus, we get along well. A few days of wandering at the city gate is nothing compared to meeting someone with whom I have a rare and genuine connection with. She paused for a moment. They say Changing has a population of over 1 million. Otherwise, how would you find me? Indeed. Remember to come to the West Gate to see me. If you find me, I'll treat you to meet again, she added. Remember, go to the West Gate at dusk. If you don't find me after 2 visits, don't bother coming again. I'll either be out of changing or dead. Songyu pondered her words, then shook his head. You've already treated me today. If we meet in changing again, it'll be my turn to treat you. She didn't hesitate at all. Deal. After finishing the meal, she called the restaurant owner to settle the bill. The bones were priced by weight, and the price included the side dishes and cooking. The restaurant owner quoted 122 wen, but charged her around 120 wen. She counted the money, feeling the pinch but maintaining a calm exterior. The meal was expensive, but worth it. It was a toast to a rare connection. Farewell. See you in Changjiang. They parted ways, with one heading left and the other heading right. One returned to the inn, while the other headed into the city. There wasn't much more to say. Yet Songyu still felt a deep emotion. In this era, the world was vast and people were insignificant, making each encounter and acquaintance extraordinarily precious. With vast mountains and rivers and a boundless sea of people, countless farewells would become lifelong separations. When friends were far apart, reuniting could sometimes require all-out effort. While such situations might seem commonplace and taken for granted, they were far from ordinary. Chapter 64, Taoist Priest Maozhi and Kangerzi. Inside a tailor's shop in the city, Songyu had just gathered his thoughts and was now standing in front of an old granny. He was showing her some measurements, explaining that he wanted something similar to a dalian to be sewn onto a saddle bag. About this size, he gestured. The old granny squinted and carefully examined the measurements before pulling out a ruler. It's bigger than a wallet, she remarked. Yes, it shouldn't be too flat. Are you planning to carry something large, sir? She asked. Yes. How big? She inquired. About. Meow, a cat pawed at his robe. Songyu looked down and understood immediately. He picked up the cat and held it up to show it to the old granny. To carry this, he explained. You want it to be sewn onto a horse's saddle bag, she confirmed. I'm taking her on a long journey, he replied. Understood, the granny said confidently, waving her hand. Thank you, Granny, Songyu said. He trusted the expertise of the seasoned craftswoman. After leaving a deposit and agreeing on a time to bring the saddle bag for sewing, he left with the Calico cat. \\\. Few days later, Songyu had nearly mastered the swallow's flight techniques. Besides gaining a new skill, he had also experienced a fresh perspective and gained new insights. He had truly learned a lot. It was time to leave. With King Yangzi's permission, Songyu went to the backyard of the Taoist temple. The yard and its surroundings were filled with bamboo groves. Outside the yard, the bamboo was of the ordinary, practical kind. Inside, the bamboo was decorative, growing neither too thick nor too tall. The nodes were closely spaced and smooth to the touch, and the bamboo itself was hard. The bamboo seemed like a type of Philistachys bamboo, and were ideal for making staffs. Songyu had been eyeing them for a while. Today, he circled the bamboo grove, carefully examining and selecting the bamboo. He touched each stalk and compared them to one another, and finally chose one. My apologies, he said as he cupped his hand and bowed in salute before approaching the chosen bamboo. He gripped the base of the bamboo with the web of his hand, then he seemed to effortlessly extract it. Then, holding the bamboo, he slowly slid his hand upward, causing the small branches on top to fall off one by one. After measuring the appropriate length, he pinched with his thumb and index finger, and the upper part snapped off cleanly and neatly. What remained was a bamboo staff, perfectly sized for a hand grip. The nodes were smooth, as if polished, and the entire body of the bamboo was straight and jade green in the sunlight. It was just the right length, too. Songyu inspected it closely and was very pleased and was about to leave. However, he took a few steps and suddenly stopped. A young girl was also standing in the bamboo forest, crouched down, holding a thin bamboo staff the size of a finger. She was twisting it left and right, shaking the bamboo in circles with all her might to try to snap it off. Songyu couldn't help but walk over to watch her struggle closely. Lady Calico, he called out. She responded. What are you doing? I'm trying to snap off the bamboo, she said. And why are you trying to snap off bamboo? Turning to look at him, she paused and retorted. Why did you snap off the bamboo then? I'm making a walking stick. I didn't know, she said simply. Since you asked the temple owner, I also asked the temple owner, and he said I could take one too. How polite of you, Songyu commented with a smile. He walked over to help her. This bamboo, only as thick as a thumb, had been bent by her. The bent part was looking quite battered, but the bamboo was resilient and would not break. He squatted down beside the little girl, grasped the area just above the bent section, and then released his hand. Before she realized it, the bamboo already had a neat, clean cut, as if cut by a sharp blade. The girl was instantly stunned, and turned around to stare straight at him. Song Yu smiled again. He then smoothed the bamboo as he had done before, cleaned it up, and handed it to her. He said, "This is a simple application of the metal element spell. Would you like to learn it? If you do, it will make chopping firewood much easier." The girl accepted the bamboo but continued squatting in place, looking up at him silently. In the past, she would have eagerly wanted to learn. But even after learning the fire element spell for such a long time, practicing diligently morning and evening as well as at set times in the morning and afternoon, she could only just manage to produce a visible flame. Even so, she was already burdened with the important task of tending the fire. The Taoist had told her that tending the fire would aid in her cultivation. The girl's eyes darted back and forth, then she pursed her lips and finally said nothing. She picked up the bamboo staff and turned to leave. Song Yu chuckled and followed her out. In the front yard, a jianghu-bred horse stood quietly, already equipped with a saddle bag on its back. The Taoists of the temple stood nearby, and the temple itself remained serene. Song Yu walked over with his bamboo staff and sincerely bowed to everyone. "I have been here for over half a month. Thanks to the hospitality of all of you, my Taoist friends, this has been the most comfortable period of my journey. I am deeply grateful." "Not at all," the Taoists quickly returned the gesture. "However, I am now heading down the mountain to continue my journey, and I must bid you all farewell. Though I'm reluctant to part with you, I have no choice. Whether fate brings people together or causes them to part, there's always something wonderful about it. Then, I won't say more on the matter," Song Yu said, pausing to glance at the youngest child in the group before looking at everyone again. "When my journey is over, if any of you visit Linquin County in Yizhu, you are welcome to come to Yin Yang Mountain to see me. I will be sure to host you well." "Certainly. Farewell then," he said. "Take care, Taoist friend. We can feel your heartfelt sentiments for us. There's no need to send us further." Song Yu, along with the jianghu-bred horse and the little girl, walked out of the temple. The Taoist priests indeed stopped at the gate and did not follow. He gave them one last bow before turning to leave without further words. The little girl also waved her bamboo staff in farewell to them and then turned around to look at Song Yu. She said as they walked, "King Yangzi." "Yes." "Guanghuazi. He's the temple owner of Fuking Temple. Why do they all have Zai in their names?" In recent years, it has become popular for Taoists to adopt names ending in Zai, while literati use names ending in Daoran. "What's your Zai name?" The little girl waved her bamboo staff randomly as she walked alongside him. Then she turned around and looked up at him. "I don't have a Zai name." The little girl tilted her head, thinking for a moment. "Maojuzi." "What is Maojuzi?" he asked. "You've never seen Maojuzi." "What is it?" "You're not very smart," she retorted. "So what is it?" "It sticks to fur and won't come off," she answered. "Oh," Song Yu realized she was talking about a type of plant fruit. "And kangaroo," the little girl added. "Do you like them?" "No," the little girl shook her head vigorously, her voice firm. From her expression, Song Yu saw a strong sense of dislike and vigilance. Maojuzi was also known as hitchhikers, blackjack, beggarticks. Its fruit was a cluster of black-brown short spines that could stick to clothes or hair. Kangaroo, on the other hand, was a small green ball with backward-facing barbs. It was even more difficult to remove from clothes or hair than Maojuzi, especially from hair. It seemed she had suffered a lot from these two things in the past. But now it was spring. These things should be less common, right? After walking for a while, Song Yu slowed his pace and took out Yudi Jisheng from the horse's back. He flipped open the first page, which showed a map of Great Yan. It was a very rough map, only depicting the general shapes of the provinces and marking their locations without much detail. Details on the climate of each state, notable attractions and scenic spots, their general locations within the state, and how to get there were explained in the text behind the map, occasionally supplemented with small maps. Although he might still need to ask for directions, this information was already of great help to him. However, this map was different from modern maps. For one, it wasn't drawn with the north at the top and the south at the bottom, which added a lot of confusion. He had to rely on his geographical knowledge to interpret it. Shuzhou should be in the southwest of Great Yan, slightly to the lower left if the map were oriented north top and south bottom. If he headed directly north, it wasn't that far to travel to Changing. However, considering that it would require some backtracking, and that Changing is just one of Song Yu's stops rather than his destination, it is not worth going directly there. Thus, he planned to continue south until he left Shuzhou, then head east. First, he would go to Pingzhou to visit Yunding Mountain. Then, he would go north, and finally westward, making a circuit through several provinces before reaching Changing. It wouldn't be a journey of 10,000 li, but close to 8 or 9,000. Song Yu put the book back into the saddlebag. Looking back, he saw the green mountains becoming blurry, the temple under the mountains growing smaller, and the bamboo grove behind the houses merging into a blur. He could no longer see the Taoists. Song Yu stood still for a moment, taking one last look. Perhaps he would never return here again. This moment was his final one with this landscape. This last look was his last one. Maybe they would meet again, but that would be in 10 or 20 years. Even if the landscape didn't change, he would no longer be young. The Song Yu of that time was still unknown to him now, and who could say what he would feel then? It was just a scenic part of the journey, yet it still made him sigh. Taoist. Song Yu turned his gaze back to the road ahead. It was early morning. A damp sun had just risen to the mountaintop, blending into where the mountain mist met the clouds. Leaning on a staff, he walked slowly. The green mountains stretched for 10 li away, and the tide was low, leaving the path sandy. What kind of landscapes and people lay ahead? On this very day, news arrived from Lingbo County to Anqing County. The news that the water demon, which had caused chaos for years, was finally subdued. The corpse floated up in the river, at least 10 zhang long and several zhang wide. If not for the wide and deep part of the Liujiang River, it wouldn't have fit. The waterway was now clear, with no more water demons causing trouble. Demon was subdued by a wandering immortal, young in appearance, accompanied by a juju-bred horse without reins and a calico cat full of spirituality. He didn't even enter the water, but managed to eliminate such a water demon. It was hard to believe he wasn't a deity that ascended to Earth. Now, the 100,000 people of Lingbo County were preparing to erect a statue and a temple for him at the newly reopened Lingbo Ferry crossing to express their gratitude. The jianghu people who had not yet left Anqing County, upon hearing this and reflecting on what they had seen in recent days, were all astonished. This was especially true for the members of the Zishan sect. // Midst the continuous mountains, within a courtyard. Mr. Song has left. The youth still stood respectfully before the elder. Cough, cough, cough. The elder coughed repeatedly, striking his cane on the ground, his voice old and hoarse. I told you to be bolder, not to conquer the world, revive our clan, or anything grandiose. Cough, cough, cough. I just wanted you to have the courage to do what you want, to not lose what's yours unnecessarily. Speak louder, get underestimated less, and it will save you many troubles. Being timid isn't bad, but it can make you miss out on a lot. Ancestor. Don't talk nonsense, cough, cough, cough. The elder coughed repeatedly. Say what you truly want to say. I want to see Mr. Song off, the young man said. All right. Thank you, ancestor. The youth turned to leave. Wait, the old man said. Huh? Mr. Song is a Taoist master. If you think he's good, you can follow him. It might be your opportunity. Be it Taoism or cultivation, it will at least make your life more fulfilling. The old man fixed his cloudy eyes on him and said, Think it over yourself. What? The old man said. I don't dare to, the young man replied. Then you will miss out. The youth stood there, eyes full of hesitation. Finally, he said, I will accompany Mr. Song a bit further. I'll see him out of Shuzhou and then return. As you wish. The swallow flew out the door.